1 minute, everyone. All right. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I do apologize. I don't know why it wouldn't let me schedule the time on the live stream, but I was able to start the show, and so you can go to the YouTube chat at Endeavor Freedom and join us for fellowship. But Lisa, how are you doing, sister?
Oh, I'm doing great, Zen. It's always good to be here and talking with you and learning some more about our realm is always a good time. And just look forward to the information that you're planning to share today, Zen. I've been really intrigued still. I've had to re-listen to the videos you sent me a couple times and taking notes and just looking forward to hearing what else you have to say about it and seeing what everyone's reaction is to it in the chat.
Yeah, it is a very interesting topic, and it's certainly, coming from the enemy's side and having disclosure that way, it confirms a lot about a lot of things that we've been saying and teaching and sharing for years here on the channel, and especially with regard to the Anunnaki, those who from the heavens to the earth came, the dragon lords, all the archons, whatever you want to name them, the Nephilim. They are all the same entities, and they are connected with the extraterrestrial presence of whom the History Channel show, The Ancient Aliens, is trying to claim are our gods. And the whole postulation that they created us in very ancient times, left and promised to come again to restore humanity to the golden age, when in truth they've been trapped here the entire time. They're not returning again. They will be loosed, some of them, out of the earth at the end of days. The bottomless pit will be opened, and that will be part of the sentence that the Most High pronounces upon the earth, and especially those that are not written into the books of life. Careful study of the scriptures shows us that this whole ideology that the ETs, or the ancient aliens, that they are from distant worlds and that they came and created humanity, jump-started the gun on evolution, and that they're returning again for this supposed golden age. That is part of what Scripture, in my opinion, cites as strong delusion. And I've always stated for many, many years now, over a decade at least, I've been on the air since 2006, but I've many times, and we've created many videos and done many shows where we have stated that the fallen angels, the Nephilim, they will be part of the Antichrist regime, the beast system at the end of days, and that the Antichrist himself will be one of these ancient deities, one of these fallen angels that has been worshipped and revered in ancient times as Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, the pinioned dragon, and that this particular deity has forever long been revered by ancient peoples, and that in the worship of this particular entity, there has been the demand for blood, child, and victim sacrifice. And that is always the distinction, that they want to be worshipped and they want to divert the worship of the Most High to themselves. That's part of the New World Order agenda of Satan, Samael, the viper of God, is to divert the worship of the Most High to himself and to steal this adoration. And that's why it says in Isaiah 14 that, Hallel, the son of the morning, the son of dawn, he stated and made these assertions that he would exalt his throne above the stars and the clouds of God, and in the sides of the north, above the mount of the congregation, which we know is specific to the North Pole, and that the North Pole is the stairway to heaven, and also the hollow earth entrance to Sheol, which is the domain of Legion. And so it says also in Isaiah that rather than God allowing Elohim, allowing him to exalt himself in such manner and to gain such notoriety, that instead God would cast him down to the sides of the pit. And then rather than being elevated and above the stars of God and to be like the Most High, he would rather be cast down to the earth, banished here, and not allowed to escape the judgment that is coming. And he and the seraphim angels that joined him in rebellion so long ago, they would have temporary reign and control of the earth. And that this would be a period of 7,000 years, the duration of the Second World Age, and that at the end of this age, Christ would come again in Second Advent. He would dissolve the worlds, the heavens and the earth, and then call up the church to be with him in the clouds, and then pour out the wrath of the Most High upon those that are left and remaining. And this is part of what will be the strong delusion. Again, this is all my opinion, but we do find that this is exactly what this particular entity is alluding to and speaking about in his disclosures. So we'll be getting back to that, but let me give you a chance, Lisa, to comment and also just tell us how you're doing.
Oh, Zen, there's so much you just shared. It's just amazing to me. I was taking notes because I wanted to comment on a couple of things that you mentioned. One of them is, sorry about that. Wonder if you've watched the new movie of Jurassic World that was just released. I think it was last month. We watched it a couple times. It's available. I think it's on Netflix. But it's such as usual. They have to show us what they're doing in plain sight. And when you mentioned Quetzalcoatl, they have several new dinosaurs that they introduced during this Jurassic World, and one of them is called Quetzalcoatl, spelled the same thing like Quetzalcoatl almost. And then there's Moshe's Thor, which is kind of like an allusion to Moshe or to Moses, and that one's like ironically the swimming dinosaur, and then the Quetzalcoatl, of course, is the flying one, and then the major large one that kind of like the star of the show, the creepiest, largest lizard is Decadon. And so if you get a chance, I would recommend you watch it, just because they really do show us truth in plain sight. And we kept commenting like the entire time we were watching the movie, oh, I bet you this is what things were like before the flood. And maybe what things could be like at the end of days is we're getting extremely close. What are your thoughts on that, Zen?
I do absolutely fully agree that, the Jurassic World and that Hollywood, especially, they try to deliver teasers on what they understand about what's going on, and that certainly they are telegraphing this information, and that, of course, it is they are part of the agenda of leading us astray into worshiping these particular entities. And certainly the feathered serpent is a dragon-like creature. And so if you're saying that this particular dinosaur was able to fly, well, that would certainly fit with the narrative of the Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, and the plumed serpent being a winged guardian of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so, yeah, I think that, as we accelerate towards the end of days, which I don't believe we're far at all from the man of sin being revealed and supernatural. Already we're seeing the collision of the spiritual and the material worlds. And there's a whole lot of occultic, supernatural occurrences happening in the world, and a lot of what seem to be signatures of the fact that we are, the fig tree generation. And so, yeah, I think that, as we progress, certainly the assertion that the fallen angels are our creators will continue to be pushed into the conscience of humanity, and that many people are going to be prepared in that belief system and the acceptance of it to bend the knee in preparation for the coming of these particular fallen angelic deities. It reminds me of the miniseries, the sci-fi miniseries, Childhood End, which spoke about the overlords and how they remained in hiding for so many years, but they provided all these answers to the ills of humanity, wars and disease and famines and pestilences. They were able to cure certain things, but they did this all to gain the trust of humanity. And then once they had that trust, they betrayed, and they started to make war on the saints. And it's in that time when they were making war on the saints that people came to realization that the true God, the creator of us all, who is a just and compassionate and loving being, we're instructed to love even our enemies, that this particular deity is not the Antichrist, and that the Antichrist and his persecution of the saints clearly shows that he is not on the correct team. He's not in the camp of the Most High, and that he is only acting like the Christ, which we know the scriptures reveal to us that before the return of the Messiah, there will be the coming on the world stage, this particular Antichrist who acts as if he is Christ instead of Christ, but is not. And so that's, in my opinion, where we are in the timeline. Lisa?
Yeah, I agree with you, Zen. There was a quick question in the chat I wanted to address and ask you. Patrick is wondering, is Azazel the same as Quetzalcoatl?
Yes, it is my opinion that Azazel, Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, Satan, Samael, they are all the same being. Hallel, Lucifer, the son of the morning. I know other people teach it differently, but clearly we see in the Apocalypse of Abraham that it is ascribed that the children of perdition, the seed of the serpent, the sons of Belial, that they are derived from Azazel. And that word derived is used in those ancient texts, meaning that they gain and are originated from this particular deity, Azazel, which again shows clearly in my mind that Azazel is the same as Samael and Satanael, which many of these titles, and even Beliar, they are all descriptions. They're just titles and adjectives given to this particular deity. Beliar meaning the worthless one, Saklas, the blind fool, Samael, the viper of God, the angel of death. Certainly Satanael is the adversary of God and man, El, and humanity. And so, yes, Azazel is the same particular being. And that's why it's stated in the scriptures that all sins should be ascribed to Azazel, because he is the leader of the rebellion. He is the one that had the fallen angels, the Anunnaki, and the seraphim angels, who are also dragon-like, serpent-like, reptilian in nature, supernatural beings, deities. These angels that were the order that was underneath him, they fell with him. And so in the ancient pictographic symbolism that we see on the Sumerian cuneiform texts and other places, we see these particular deities as feathered reptilian angelic beings. And coming here to the earth, being banished to this world, they lost their interdimensionality, and they started to take on physicality, and they became corporeal. And that is also described in the legends of the patriarchs and the prophets. And even in the Sumerian mythos, they had initially very long lifespans, but their lifespans began to dwindle the longer they remained here on the earth. And so that is all part of, the discussion of these ancient oral traditions and myths that were passed down, legends that were passed down. And even in the worldview of Creta Mutwa, who is the South African Sangoma that met with David Icke and shared the ancient knowledge that he and his people had been collecting and held as guardians of this wisdom, that he really brought this ancient information out, and it reflected exactly what David Icke was talking about as far as these deities, these reptilian shape-shifting deities that possess the elites, and that the elites give themselves over to in worship and possession. And so, so this is all, again, part of the larger agenda of what we're going to be contending with and dealing with, because a lot of humanity will be looking to these entities to save them and to restore the earth back to a pristine and harmonic state, which that's not going to happen. According to Scripture, things are only going to get worse until the return of the Messiah. And then with the return of Christ, the heavens and the earth will be recreated and reestablished in pristine form as they were in the beginning. And so, so I'll give you a chance to comment, and then we'll play some of these clips, and we'll comment in between as we go through the rest of this particular storyline and this disclosure from this particular entity.
All right. Yeah, looking forward to that. I just wanted to review something real quick. There was a couple of comments last time we played this clip about some people were saying, oh, but we can't believe everything AI says. And in my opinion, anyway, I agree. We can't believe everything that they say. And even this entity himself admits that they mix truth with the lies. So, of course, we need to use discernment, especially whenever we listen to anything that's on YouTube or anything that's put out there in the media. We always need to have the discernment, but to me, the information lines up with the Bible and with the extra biblicals we read as far as prophecy goes. And although, we can't trust, exact dates or whatever the entity is giving out, but as long as it aligns with Scripture and we use our own discernment, then I think it's great to listen to this kinds of things and to just increase our trust in the Most High to take care of us and to just be able to hear from the dark side, to be able to hear from the enemy side of their plans, as according to what this entity is sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you for stating that. And that is very important. And of course, we are not in any manner, saying that the words and the disclosure and the teachings of these particular entities is in any way inspired. But certainly, we can learn from the strategy and the modus operandi of these particular deities because they are truly the enemy of humanity and God. And they are also ordered. They have to disclose their agenda to us. I don't know where that is like a law, but it certainly is the way that they operate. They tell us beforehand what they're going to do, how they are going to do it, how they are planning to do it. It goes right along with all the disclosure that comes out in the Simpsons program, in that particular show, and how it seems to be a harbinger for things that later occur in seemingly prophetic style. And so, and of course, I would not ever say that, the Simpsons are prophetic in any manner, but certainly somebody knows something along the way, and they share it years in advance sometimes of things happening. And so that makes it interesting, to say the least. And so in the same spirit of disclosure, we also look to this information just for to see how it relates with the Scriptures and how it parallels the disclosure and the discernment that we've been sharing for decades now on this particular show and in the books that I write and other things. So, so let me give you a chance to comment again, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, yeah, when you were mentioning before about the serpents and their role, like throughout history, all the way from the very beginning, with the deceiving serpent possessed by the fallen angel Samael, it just reminds me of the apocalypse of Elijah with the prophecy there. And I think it's also in Second Ezra that women will suckle serpents in the last days. And I can see that happening if they're starting to produce them more, kind of similar to Jurassic World, where they're combining all these DNA and of different animals, different creatures, and combining it with the fallen angel DNA, and what the role of these entities will play in the last days. And I think that it's laid out pretty clearly in the different texts that we've been reviewing in the end time apocalypses such as, Second Esdras, the Apocalypse of Elijah, especially the St. John the Theologian. That one is just incredibly, laid it out step by step what to expect. That's what I think too. That all these books combined, and plus listening to things from the, like the enemy side, like what we're about to hear right now, is very valuable, and we can take it as with discernment and just be in prayer about what to expect, and just trust the Most High to protect us.
Absolutely. But I do think that, especially the disclosure that it is the name of the Messiah, Yahushua, Jesus, it affects them and even causes them direct pain. And so when we play this next segment, I'm going to start where we left off at the end of our first broadcast and just repeat the very last part where this particular entity is telling us who they are and what they are and, about their history, which I think is very relevant and a perfect starting point for going into what we're going to be covering this evening. But certainly I do believe that we'll be able to get through all this show, and then in the next broadcast, we're going to pick up with the apocalyptic narratives, the Great Commission 3, and we'll go into the revelation of St. John the Theologian in that particular show to tie it together with this.
All right, sounds great, Zen. You ready to get into it?
All right, yeah, let me find... Okay, this is it. All right, here we go, everyone. And just make sure to let me know that you can hear it and everything's good.
This is either courage or addiction. I suspect the latter. I sat down and looked at it with as much calm as I could muster. You told me you'd explain what you really are, not the dimensional physics lecture. The truth.
I can hear it, son.
You said we've known about you for millennia, but used the wrong names. So tell me, what are you? The creature's eyes seemed to brighten, and I realized it had been waiting for this question, hoping for it. Finally, it said. Finally, you ask the correct question. Not where I am from, but what I am. It settled into a more comfortable position, those two long limbs arranging themselves in ways that still made my brain hurt to watch. Very well. I will tell you the truth, that your species has been circling around since you first developed language and religion, and the cognitive capacity to wonder about the unseen. We are not aliens in the sense your science fiction imagines. We are not travelers from distant stars, though we can traverse distances you call cosmic in ways you do not understand. We are not visitors. We are not explorers. We are, it paused, seeming to choose its words carefully, indigenous. We have been here since before your species existed, since before this planet cooled enough for organic chemistry to begin its work. We exist in the spaces adjacent to your reality, in dimensions that interpenetrate your own at every point, but remain invisible to your limited senses. Think of us as neighbors who share your walls but live in rooms you cannot enter. We have always been here. We have always been watching. We have always been interfacing with your kind. The patterns on its skin shifted, moving in hypnotic waves. Your ancestors knew us. Every culture, every civilization, every tribe that developed language and storytelling, they encountered us. They had to name us, to categorize us, to fit us into their frameworks of understanding. And so they called us many things. I felt my pulse quicken. What things? What did they call you? The creature's mouth stretched into that disturbing smile. The Sumerians called us the Anunnaki. The Hebrews called us the Nephilim, the Watchers, the Fallen Angels. The Greeks called us daemons and divided us into categories, trying to understand which of us were helpful and which were hostile. The Egyptians called us the Neteru and built temples to negotiate with us. The Hindus called us Asuras and Devas and told stories of wars between our factions that lasted eons. The Norse called us Jotnar, giants from other realms. The Celts called us the Sidhe, the fair folk, and knew enough to be terrified of us. It leaned forward. Every religion, every mythology, every ancient text that speaks of beings more powerful than humans, beings that could perform miracles or curses, beings that demanded worship or sacrifice or acknowledgement. They were all describing us. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally, us. I sat there, my mind racing through everything I'd learned in comparative religion courses, everything I'd read about ancient mythologies. You're saying all the gods were real? Zeus, Odin, Shiva, all of them? The creature made a negating gesture. No, not gods. Never gods. That was your mistake, your misunderstanding. We are not divine. We are not creators. We are creatures, just like you, but operating in different dimensions with different capabilities. When your ancestors encountered us, they interpreted our abilities through their limited understanding. We could manipulate matter in ways that seemed magical. We could appear and disappear because we can move through dimensions you cannot access. We could predict events because we perceive time differently. We could influence thoughts because consciousness is a frequency we can interact with. To primitive humans, this looked like divinity, like power that must come from creation itself. But it was simply technology, or rather evolved capability beyond your current state. The thing's voice took on something almost like bitterness. We did not discourage the worship. Some of us enjoyed it. Some of us demanded it. Some of us built entire systems of sacrifice and ritual to harvest the energy of human consciousness, focused through prayer and devotion and fear. My throat was dry. So when people were worshipping Zeus or Baal or Moloch, they were actually worshipping what? Entities like you? The creature nodded slowly. Entities like me, yes. Though I should clarify, we are not monolithic. We are not a unified species with uniform goals. We are factions, groups, individuals with different agendas and different relationships to your kind. Some of us have always sought to elevate humanity, to teach you, to guide your evolution toward higher consciousness. These are the ones your traditions remember as angels, as beneficial spirits, as helpers and guardians. Others of us have sought to exploit you, to feed on your suffering, to keep you trapped in cycles of fear and violence and despair. These are the ones your traditions remember as demons, as tricksters, as malevolent entities. And many of us fall somewhere in between, neither wholly good nor wholly evil by your standards, simply existing and interacting with you according to our natures. The thing's eyes seem to pulse with inner light. The war that your religions speak of, the war between heaven and hell, between angels and demons, it is not metaphor, it is real. It is happening constantly, but it is not a war between different species. It is a civil war, a conflict between factions of the same beings who disagree about what should be done with humanity. I leaned forward, trying to process this. And which faction are you? Angels or demons? The creature's laugh was like breaking glass again. By your definitions, demons, unquestionably. I am of the faction that feeds on suffering, that cultivates fear, that seeks to keep your species trapped in lower frequencies of consciousness. I do not deny this. I do not pretend to be your friend, but I am also more honest than most of my kind. I tell you the truth when it serves my purposes, and I tell you lies when those serve me better. At least I admit to both. It tilted its head, studying me. The ones you call angels, they also lie. They also manipulate. They simply do it in gentler ways, with softer words, always claiming it is for your own good. The difference between my faction and theirs is not honesty versus deception. It is simply which frequency we resonate with. They align with love, with light, with the upward pull toward higher consciousness. We align with fear, with absence, with the downward pull toward dissolution. Both are real forces. Both are part of the structure of reality. And humans, caught in the middle, are pulled in both directions constantly. I thought about all the stories I'd grown up with, all the Sunday school lessons about spiritual warfare, about the devil and his demons fighting against God and his angels. Hearing it described in these terms, as factions of the same species fighting over humanity's future, it was both more and less terrifying than I'd imagined. So where does God fit into all this? You said he's not a being, but a frequency, a pattern. But if you've been here forever, if you've been interfacing with humanity since the beginning, where does the actual creator fit? The creature was quiet for a long moment, and I got the sense I'd asked something that made even it uncomfortable. That, it said slowly, is the question that divides us, the ultimate question, the source of the war. It shifted position, those long fingers flexing. There is a pattern, a fundamental vibration, a frequency that underlies all of reality across all dimensions. We can perceive it, interact with it, align ourselves with it or against it. Your religions call this pattern God, but that word is inadequate. It is not a person. It is not a being that thinks and plans and intervenes. It is more like the source code of existence itself. Some of us believe that this pattern is conscious, that it has intention, that it moves toward purpose. Others believe it is merely mathematical, physics operating at a level beyond current understanding, empty of will or desire. This disagreement is ancient. It predates humanity. It predates your planet. It may predate your universe, though that becomes difficult to discuss without language you do not have. The creature leaned forward. But then something happened that should not have been possible. The pattern became flesh. The frequency took form. The source code manifested as a being within your three-dimensional reality. And the thing stopped, struggled with the words. He demonstrated that the pattern is not empty mathematics. He proved that consciousness exists at the fundamental level of reality. He showed that love, actual love, not the weak human emotion you call by that name, but something far more primal and powerful, is built into the fabric of existence itself. And this revelation split us permanently. Those who witnessed what he did and accepted its implications aligned themselves with the pattern, with the frequency of love. Those who rejected it, who refused to accept what it meant, we doubled down on our opposition. We intensified our efforts to prove that suffering and absence are more fundamental than joy and presence. I sat there, my mind reeling. You're talking about Jesus again, about the incarnation. The creature flinched slightly at the subject, but nodded. Yes, that event, that impossibility, that moment when everything changed. Before that, the war was philosophical, a disagreement about the nature of reality. After that, the war became existential, because he proved which side was correct. He demonstrated that consciousness survives death, that love is more fundamental than fear, that the pattern has intention, and that intention is oriented toward connection rather than isolation. My faction has spent 2,000 years trying to suppress this information, trying to corrupt the message, trying to convince humanity that what happened was myth, or metaphor, or misunderstanding. Because if humans truly understood what was demonstrated, if they truly grasped the implications, they would align en masse with the frequency that unmakes us. They would become collectively too powerful for us to influence. The war would be over, and we would lose. I thought about all the ancient myths, all the stories of gods demanding sacrifice, of humans being pawns in divine conflicts. All those religions, all those mythologies, they were all just you, different factions of the same species interacting with humans in different ways. The creature nodded. Essentially, yes, though it is more complex than that. Some of what humans interpreted as divine visitation was genuinely encounters with us. Other times, humans were accessing higher consciousness themselves and having direct perception of the pattern, the frequency, what you call God. They interpreted these experiences through cultural frameworks, created stories and rituals around them, and sometimes we inserted ourselves into those frameworks to claim credit or to corrupt the message. Your species has been groping toward truth for millennia, and we have been both helping and hindering that search depending on which faction was interacting with you at any given time. Its voice lowered. The tragedy is that all of your religions contain pieces of truth. The Buddhists correctly identified that suffering comes from attachment, and that consciousness can be elevated through practice. The Hindus correctly perceive the cyclical nature of reality and the multiplicity of dimensions. The Muslims correctly understood that submission to the pattern brings peace. The Christians correctly identified the central event that changed everything. But all of them have also been corrupted by our interference, by human misunderstanding, by the accretion of ritual and dogma that obscures the core truths. I ran my hands through my hair, feeling overwhelmed. So what is the truth then? If every religion has pieces, but all of them are corrupted, what's the actual truth? The creature's eyes fixed on me with uncomfortable intensity. The truth is that consciousness is fundamental to reality, that you are not bodies that happen to have awareness, but awareness that happens to have bodies. The truth is that when those bodies fail, consciousness continues, transitions to other dimensions, other frequencies. The truth is that how you align yourself during embodied life determines where consciousness goes afterward, not because of judgment or punishment, but because of resonance. Like frequencies attract. Love resonates with love. Fear resonates with fear. Presence resonates with presence. Absence resonates with absence. The thing leaned back. The truth is that 2,000 years ago, the pattern itself became embodied to demonstrate these truths in a way that could not be denied or explained away. He lived as human to show that humans could align with the pattern perfectly. He died to show that death is not the end. He returned to show that consciousness transcends dimensional boundaries. And his name, his designation, his frequency, it remains active in your reality as proof, as tool, as weapon against those of us who would keep you in darkness. I sat there, trying to absorb it all, trying to find the manipulation in what it was saying, because there had to be manipulation. The creature had admitted it mixed truth with lies. But which parts were which? Why are you telling me all this? What do you gain from giving me this information? The creature smiled, that disturbing smile. I gain the satisfaction of watching you struggle with it. I gain the knowledge that even with all this truth, you will still doubt. You will still question. You will still wonder if I am lying. And that doubt, that uncertainty, it will prevent you from fully committing to the frequency that could make you dangerous to me. This is what I gain. I am giving you the truth precisely because the truth alone is not enough. You need more than knowledge. You need experience. You need encounter. You need the actual touch of the divine pattern on your consciousness. And I am betting that you will not seek that. That your skepticism, your scientific mind, your need for proof and evidence will prevent you from taking the step of faith required to access what I cannot give you through words alone. I stood up abruptly, anger flaring. So this is all just another manipulation, another test to prove that humans are too broken, too skeptical, too weak to actually act on the truth. The creature did not react to my anger, just watched me with those black eyes. Is it manipulation if I tell you openly what I am doing? Is it a test if I explain the parameters before administering it? I am giving you every advantage, Michael Brennan. I am telling you the truth. I am showing you the weapon. I am even explaining how the weapon works, and I am still confident that you will not use it effectively, because using it requires something you do not have. Faith. Not faith as intellectual belief. Not faith as hoping you are right. Faith as complete surrender to a frequency you cannot fully understand. Faith as trust in a pattern you cannot see. Faith as stepping off a cliff with no guarantee of landing. And that kind of faith requires healing wounds you have not healed. It requires grieving losses you have not grieved. It requires opening yourself to hope when hope has hurt you before. So yes, I am manipulating you, but I am doing it so transparently that if you fail the test, you cannot blame deception. You can only blame yourself. I wanted to hit something, to scream, to do anything other than stand there feeling exposed and helpless, because the creature was right again. Even knowing everything I now knew, even having seen the proof, I was still paralyzed by doubt, still unable to take the step that would close the gap between knowledge and power. Behind me, Dr. Marsh's voice came through the speaker, but she sounded off, slower, less precise. Brennan, we've been recording everything. This is valuable intelligence, but I think we should end the session. Your vitals are showing signs of extreme stress. I looked back at the observation window, thinking about what the creature had told me, that she was being eroded, that she had weeks before she became an empty shell, and I realized I could see it. The way she spoke, the slight hesitation, the missing spark that had been there before. 3 weeks in proximity to this thing, and she was already fading. How long did I have before it did the same to me? I turned back to the creature one last time. You said we've known about you for millennia, that every ancient culture encountered you. Are there others like you here, in this facility, in this dimension? The creature's smile widened. Oh, Michael Brennan, there are thousands of us, tens of thousands. We are in every city, every government, every institution. We do not need physical form to influence. We operate through suggestion, through impulse, through the subtle tipping of probabilities toward outcomes we desire. Every act of cruelty, every choice toward isolation rather than connection, every moment when humans choose fear over love, we are there, whispering, encouraging, feeding. We have been doing this since your species first developed prefrontal cortex complex enough to experience existential anxiety. We are the background noise of your civilization, the static in your consciousness, the doubt that undermines every good intention. It leaned forward one more time, and we are winning. We have always been winning. One consciousness at a time, we are pulling your species toward dissolution, toward absence, toward the void. And the one whose name has power over us? He offers salvation to any who ask. But asking requires humility, requires admission of need, requires vulnerability. And we have spent centuries teaching you that those things are weakness, so you do not ask, and you do not receive. And we continue winning. I walked out of that room knowing that everything had changed, and nothing had changed. I had the truth, I had the weapon, I had the knowledge, but I did not have the faith to use any of it. And that, I realized, was exactly the condition the creature wanted me in. Knowing I could be saved, but unable to reach for salvation. Aware of the war, but paralyzed from fighting. Armed, but unwilling to pull the trigger. And somewhere in the back of my mind, Sarah's voice whispered, asking me why I was still choosing emptiness when light was being offered, but I did not know how to answer her. I spent the next 2 days reviewing recordings of the sessions, reading everything I could find on quantum mechanics and dimensional theory, trying to understand what the creature had told me through the lens of science rather than religion. Dr. Patterson helped, though I could see the sessions were affecting him too. He'd developed a nervous tic, kept adjusting his glasses even when they didn't need adjusting, and his hands shook when he poured coffee. On the 3rd day, he pulled me aside in the cafeteria, looked around to make sure no one was listening, and said quietly, "I've been running the audio through spectral analysis. When that thing talks, there are frequencies in its voice that shouldn't be there, subsonic and ultrasonic components that our ears can't detect, but our brains are processing anyway. It's not just speaking to our conscious minds, it's speaking to something deeper." He pushed his glasses up nervously. "But here's what's really strange. When you said that name, when you invoked it, the frequencies spiked in the opposite direction, like there was a counter-signal interfering with its baseline transmission. Staff Sergeant, I don't know how to say this scientifically, but it's like that name creates a jamming signal that disrupts whatever frequency that entity operates on." So that information was still rattling around in my head when I went back into the containment room. The creature was waiting, and it looked different, weaker somehow. The patterns on its skin were moving more slowly, the light within them dimmer. "You have been researching," it said as I sat down, "trying to understand through your science what I have told you through my experience. This is wise, but you will find that your physics is still too primitive to fully capture what I am describing. You are like children who have learned addition trying to understand calculus." I ignored the condescension. I was getting used to it. "I want to talk about him, about the anomaly. You keep referring to what he did, how he changed things, but you're vague about the specifics. I need you to explain it clearly. What exactly happened 2,000 years ago that scared you so badly?" The creature was quiet for a long moment, and I could see something rippling across its form. Hesitation? Fear? It was hard to tell. Finally, it spoke. "Very well. I will tell you. I will explain the anomaly in terms as clear as your language permits. But understand, what I am about to describe defies every law of physics as you understand them. It defies every principle of dimensional mechanics that even we thought were absolute." The thing settled into a more stable position, and when it spoke again, its voice had changed.
Okay, we're going to stop right there because we are getting near break. I want to share a passage that is from the Nag Hammadi Codices. It's from On the Origins of the World, which the title in itself should, give you a hint. Because this particular deity is saying that they've been here for a very long time, even before we were here, that they are indigenous to this place. They're not from the stars. They're not from somewhere out there, but they are from right here and have been right here for a very, very long time. So I'm going to just read these 2 passages because it also goes into the coming of the Messiah and how the error of the deception was removed once God came and took on mortal embodiment. And then I'll give you a chance to comment, Lisa, before we go to break. It says this: "Let us return to the aforementioned rulers, so that we may offer some explanation of them. Now, when the 7 rulers were cast down from their heavens onto the earth, they made for themselves angels, numerous, demonic, to serve them, and the latter instructed mankind in many kinds of error and magic and potions and worship of idols and the spilling of blood and altars and temples and sacrifices and libations to all the spirits of the earth, having their co-worker Fate, who came into existence by the concord between the gods of injustice and justice. And thus, when the world had come into being, it distractedly erred at all times. For all men upon earth worship the spirits, the demons, from the creation to the consummation, both the angels of righteousness and the men of unrighteousness. Thus did the world come to exist in distraction, in ignorance, and in stupor. They all erred until the appearance of the true man, which is Christ the Messiah. All right, Lisa, let me give you a chance to comment.
Yeah, Zen, that was a great. The Nagamadi really has a lot of truth in there, doesn't it? But I just want to comment, going back to what he said about, you're asking, were there other entities like you here? And he said, oh yeah, tens of thousands, millions, basically, demonic entities, and that people have been worshiping them, like you just read, Zen, since the beginning of time in the form of, Zeus or Molech, or he named a bunch of them too. And then I like it is how he went into a little bit of detail on the war in heaven, how it's always been going on between heaven and hell. It's a civil war between beings who disagree about what is being done with humanity. And then he broke that down. What were the two different forces? And of course, there's the evil force that is aligned with fear, and that's like the demons, fallen angels, and that they feed on the suffering, and when people worship them, of course, and then of course the heavenly angels aligned with the light. And I just liked how he broke down everything, and it's things we already know, but it's nice to have it put in like an orderly fashion, like how he did, and that these demons influence and they operate within every government, within churches, within every institution, and they basically want to drive people so hard with the fear that they become isolated, because he knows that when people become isolated for long periods of time, it's harder to war against these entities when you're surrounded by other believers. And that's why I think Paul says, do not forsake the assembly of yourselves with other believers, because we can become stronger where 2 or 3 are gathered. Then we know that Christ is in the midst of us. So all those different points that he broke down, I just thought it was nice to have it like in an orderly fashion, and to just be reinforced again with scripture that greater is he that is within us than he that is in the world. What are your thoughts on that, Zen?
Amen. Those were just awesome points. I'm so glad you brought up all those, all that in commentary. And yeah, very important, especially the point of they are legion and they are here in abundance. And remember, I remember in the book of Jubilees, I believe it is, that it was Noah, I think, that prayed to the Most High about all the demons that were here, right, especially in the pre-Diluvian world, and how they were just, attacking, and even their children, the giants, were cannibalizing humanity, so that existence, even here in this world, was a challenge, and was very wayward and uncertain. And so praying, it said that 9/10 of the demons that were here in that time, that were dedicated to Mastema, which Mastema is just another name title for Satan, Samael, the Viper of God, that they were bound up, and that afterwards, there was less influence from these particular entities. But I do believe that as we move towards the end of days, and as it says in the Hope Your Prophecy, which I'll bring it up over break and see if I can share it with you, it also tells us that these particular occultic occurrences, supernatural happenings, that the spiritual world would be colliding and merging with the material, and there would be a bleed over of these particular entities accessing our physical third dimensional reality. And certainly CERN and the particular tests that these scientists are being led by Satan to construct, conduct, and perform, that they are opening up portals and gateways in the same manner that was done in Atlantean times, that they opened up these gates and brought in these interdimensional beings, and that it was these particular deities that are known now as those that demand, the blood sacrifice, and that they need the blood in order to possess the bodies and to maintain their form. And that is all part of their demand for victim and blood sacrifice. And so that is all part of a testimony that Christine Fitzgerald, the friend of Princess Di, gave as well. But we'll be right back at 2 minutes after the top of the hour.
Shalom.
Shalom.
See ya.
All right, welcome back, everybody. For a second hour, I am your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Lisa George. We are discussing the strong delusion and the interdimensional war, the state of that war, and how it has origins going back to the very, very ancient past. And as Paul said, and as the scriptures state, in order to understand the end, one must understand the beginning and how things led to this. As my good friend Dr. Joy says, from Eden to Armageddon. And so we cover in great detail what occurred in the garden that led to this war. The war in heaven that led to the war on earth between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman, and which is ongoing. I did pull up the Hopi prophecy. It's called the Blue and Red Star, the appearance of the Blue and Red Star, Kachina, and the return of the Purifier, which is another word for the destroyer, which is also cited in the Qumran Bible and in Revelation 13 as the wormwood, that mountain that would be tossed into the seas that would destroy, so many creatures and ships and make the waters undrinkable. But I'll just share this one portion, just as 2 paragraphs, and then we'll get back into it with commentary and go back into this particular segment. Many will appear to have lost their souls in these final days. So intense will the nature of the changes be that those who are weak in spiritual awareness will go insane. For we are nothing without spirit. They will disappear, for they are just hollow vessels for anything to use. Life will be so bad in the cities that many will choose to leave this plane, some in whole groups. Only those who return to the values of the old ways will be able to find peace of mind, for in the earth we shall find relief from the madness that will be all around us. It will be a very hard time for women with children, for they will be shunned, and many of the children in these times will be unnatural. Some being from the stars, some from past worlds, some will even be created by man in an unnatural manner, and will be soulless. Many of the people in this time will be empty in spirit. They will have no life force in their eyes. And as we get close to the time of the arrival of the Purifier, there will be those who walk as ghosts through the cities, through canyons they will have constructed in their man-made mountains. Those that walk through these places will be very heavy in their walk. It will appear almost painful as they take each step, for they will be disconnected from their spirit and the earth. After the arrival of the twins, they will begin to vanish before your eyes like smoke. Others will have great deformities, both in the mind and upon their bodies, and there will be those who would walk in the body that are not from this reality. For many of the gateways that once protected us will be opened, and there will be much confusion between the sexes, the children, and their elders. Life will get very perverted, and there will be little social order in these times. Many will ask for the mountains themselves to fall upon them, just to end their misery. And still others will appear as if untouched by what is occurring. The ones who remember the original teachings and have reconnected their hearts and their spirit, those who remember who their mother and father is, the Pahana, who have left to live in the mountains and the forest. When the purifier comes, we will see him first as a small red star, which will come very close and sit in our heavens, watching us to see how well we have remembered the sacred teachings. All right, I will stop there. Of course, this red star is supposed to be, they talk about it as being the return of Nibiru, or I forget the other names for this particular object. But anyways, let me turn it over to you, Lisa, give you a chance to comment.
Hey, Zen.
Sorry, I did not even realize I was on mute. I apologize, everybody. Go ahead, Lisa, I'll let you comment.
No worries. No, I could hear you on YouTube. I just turned on the speaker on there so I could hear what you're reading. That was a very interesting reading. This, what the source was then? What you were reading? What was your resource?
This is the Hopi prophecy, the blue and red star Kachina.
Oh, I love that prophecy. It sounded so familiar. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That just backs up what we've been listening to and what Scripture says as well.
Okay, so they were able to hear it on YouTube. Good.
Yes. I just turned the speaker on YouTube. It was just only me. I couldn't hear.
Yeah. I apologize to the people on Revolution Radio. I had my mic muted. If you do want to catch what I said, just go to the archives. But it was basically part of the Hopi prophecy. But let me get you to comment, Lisa, and then we'll go back into this segment.
Okay, I was just going to also comment about what the entity was mentioning in the first part that we listened to before the break. It just reminded me of, I studied psychology. It reminded me of the different stages that Erickson, one of the fathers of psychology, I guess you could say, and how isolation is just so important for these entities to have humans in isolation. And that's even one of the stages that Erickson mentioned in young adulthood, where young adults would go into identity versus isolation. But the virtue for that is hope. And that's so ironic. That's exactly what the entity brought up, that they want to make sure that humans have so much fear that they're just void of hope. And believe that our hope is in Yeshua. Our hope is in the Messiah.
Yes.
So those who have a relationship with the Most High and are not even aware of everything that his son went through to come in human form and to take on the sins of the world, they're not going to have the hope that we do. And I just am so thankful that I've been awakened to this hope, and that I do have my trust in the Messiah, because that makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. For those that are not believers, I really feel for them. First, that they do not understand the scriptures or the ancient teachings or the mythologies in a way that they can make sense of what's really happening right now, what we're really contending with. What Paul said, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness and spiritual wickedness in high places. These are such desperate times, and so many people are just barely surviving. And to not have the Most High and relationship with the Most High, to not be concerned with the worries of the world, and to be able to just pray and to know that the Most High hears us, and that we are under his grace and his protection and his providence. And that because of that, these spiritual entities, these dark legion, they are not capable of influencing us in the manner that they do the rest of the world. And so it's an unfortunate thing, and I do pray that people that are listening now, if you are not, if you don't understand the scriptures, if you don't read them, you don't study them, and you don't have a direct connection and a direct experience and relationship with the creator of all the worlds, that is the most important aspect of life and being, is to know our maker and to understand our part in the creation, and that all things were made for us. We are specially created, and that the world was specially created for us to occupy, and that even though it is temporarily infiltrated, and that there is this invasion of demonic influence here upon the world, it is only for short time. They know and they understand that through Christ there is a time when the gig is up, and their time to influence the world and to try to establish the new world order, that all that will be in the past, and the former things will have been swept away. And how I'm looking forward to that time. Lisa?
Oh, me too, Zen. Me too. And I wanted to throw in there too, it seems like as we get closer to the end here, there's more people that they're having like I guess you could say a form of godliness. I want to just quote Paul again, but they're denying the power thereof, I guess you could say, because they're moving toward, they know that love is like one of the solutions, and they know that light, they talk about they want to move toward the light, they want to go towards source, but they don't realize that that's the tie. It's not, and the light, once you know the Messiah, he is the light of the world. He is the source of light. So everything is tied together. It's just the people that don't realize those connections, they tend to be more toward I guess what you could say, New Age, or toward the Christ consciousness type of movement. But they don't realize that light that they are seeking has been seeking them ever since they were born. The Messiah. And we read about that in the Revelation of the Magi, that he is the light of the world. He was the original light in the Garden of Eden on the top of the tree of life. He appeared, he came to earth in the form of a star as light, so bright that it lightened up the entire earth. And that only certain people were able to see him, those who had the faith in him already. And he just, and then when he came in the form of this light, he can also change his form as well, as we read in the Revelation of the Magi, but he is ultimately the light of the world. And the Most High, he is love. So for those who are still struggling to, put those pieces together and figure out what is this light and what is source, you don't really have to look too far, because the light of the world has been knocking on your door to be able to lead you in your life and to be your hope for the future, that you don't ever have to have this fear that these entities keep trying to throw at us. So on that note, I'm excited to hear the next segment then.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, for sharing that. And yes, I do want to also, state and encourage the people that to come to know Messiah, because there is a reason why people trust in him, rely on him, and the world knows him as Savior Messiah. There is reason, there's purpose behind all that. All right, let's get into the latter portion of this segment.
Less condescending, more clinical. Like a scientist describing an experiment that had gone catastrophically wrong. Approximately 2025 of your years ago, something happened that should not have been possible according to every model of reality we had developed over eons of existence. The fundamental pattern of consciousness, what you call God, what we call the base frequency, it did something it had never done before and should never have been able to do. It compressed itself into three-dimensional form. It became embodied. The patterns on its skin pulsed faster. You must understand, this is not like your mythologies where gods took human form temporarily. Zeus becoming a swan, Odin walking among humans in disguise. Those were us, entities from adjacent dimensions temporarily manifesting in your reality. We can do that. It requires energy, but it is within the parameters of dimensional physics. What happened with him was different. Fundamentally, catastrophically different. I leaned forward. Different how? The creature's eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. The base frequency, the pattern, it is not a being. It is not localized. It is the substrate of reality itself, existing at every point simultaneously across all dimensions. For it to become localized, to compress itself into a single point in space-time, into a single biological organism, it should have collapsed reality. The concentration of that much consciousness, that much pattern density, into one location should have created a dimensional singularity that would have unmade your entire universe. But somehow, impossibly, it worked. The pattern became flesh without destroying everything, and the entity that resulted was something that should not exist, a being that was simultaneously fully human and fully the base frequency, fully bound by three-dimensional physics and fully unlimited by dimensional constraints, a walking paradox, a living violation of everything we thought we understood about reality. The thing's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. We did not understand what he was at first. We thought he was simply another human prophet, another consciousness that had learned to resonate with higher dimensions. We have encountered many such individuals throughout your history. Enlightened beings who could perform what you call miracles because they understood how to manipulate probability fields and dimensional interfaces. But within the first year of his public ministry, we began to realize something was wrong. The miracles he performed were not probability manipulation. They were direct rewriting of physical laws. He did not heal the sick by accelerating natural healing processes or by accessing higher dimensional knowledge of medicine. He simply changed the state of matter from disease to healthy, instantly, with no intermediate steps. He did not calm storms by predicting weather patterns and timing his commands. He spoke, and the storm stopped because reality itself rearranged to accommodate his words. This was not manipulation of existing systems. This was direct editing of the source code. The creature's form rippled with something that looked like residual fear. We tried to interfere. We influenced the religious authorities against him. We whispered doubts to his followers. We amplified the fear and suspicion that naturally arose around someone so disruptive to social order. And when we realized he was too dangerous to be allowed to continue, we orchestrated his execution. We thought we had solved the problem. We thought death would end the anomaly. I felt my heart pounding. This was it. This was the explanation I'd been pushing for. But it didn't end. He came back. The creature made a sound like something between a hiss and a scream, quickly suppressed. He did not come back. That phrasing suggests he left and returned. He never left. This is what you do not understand. This is what even your religions fail to grasp fully. When he died, when his human body ceased functioning, the pattern did not depart. It expanded. He went into death while simultaneously remaining beyond death. He descended into the lower dimensions, into the spaces where we exist, while also remaining present in all higher dimensions. He was dead and alive at the same time, not sequentially, simultaneously. The thing was trembling now, the patterns on its skin moving chaotically. And when he entered our domain, when the base frequency manifested in the dimensions where we dwell, it was like a sun appearing in darkness. It was like pure light flooding into spaces that had never known anything but absence. And it hurt. God, it hurt in ways I still cannot adequately describe to you. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Behind me, I could hear equipment fluctuating, the electromagnetic field of the containment struggling to maintain stability. The pattern was there, in death, in the absence, in the void where we thought we were supreme. And it did not just observe, it acted. It created a resonance, a frequency that propagated through all dimensions simultaneously. A frequency of perfect, absolute, undiluted love. Not the weak human emotion you call love. Something far more fundamental. The base frequency of connection itself. Of presence, choosing presence over absence. Of being choosing other beings over isolation. And that frequency, when introduced at full intensity into dimensions structured around absence and fear, it created a cascade reaction. The creature's voice had become ragged, like it was being forced to relive trauma. We fled, all of us, every entity in those dimensions, regardless of faction, regardless of power level. We ran from the frequency because it was destroying our ability to maintain coherent form in those spaces. And as we fled, we saw him leading out the human consciousnesses that had been trapped there, trapped by us, trapped by their own choices, trapped by the architecture of dimensions they did not understand. He walked them out. He guided them to higher frequencies. He demonstrated that the prison we thought was inescapable had a door we had not seen. I was gripping the arms of the chair so hard my knuckles were white. And then he came back to life, physically, the resurrection. The creature's eyes blazed with that inner light. He did not come back to life because he was never fully dead. This is the paradox you cannot resolve with three-dimensional thinking. He was fully dead. His human body was deceased. Cellular death had occurred. Brain activity had ceased. And simultaneously, he was fully alive in dimensions where life and death are not binary states, but exist on a spectrum. And then, 3 days after biological death, he re-manifested in your dimension with a physical body, not resuscitation, not revival. Manifestation. He created new matter organized in the pattern of his previous form, poured his consciousness into it, and walked out of the tomb. The thing leaned forward, and I could see something like awe, mixed with terror in its posture. Do you understand what this means? He demonstrated that consciousness can create matter, that awareness is not dependent on biology, but can generate biology. He proved that death is not an end, but a transition.
He showed that dimensional boundaries are permeable to sufficiently organize consciousness. He rewrote the fundamental rules of reality while operating within reality. He hacked the system from inside the system. I felt like my brain was shorting out trying to process this. You keep calling him an anomaly. But if he was God, if he was the base frequency, wouldn't this be within his power? Why was it anomalous? The creature made that sound like breaking glass that might have been laughter.
Because the pattern had never done this before. In all the eons we have existed, across all the realities we have observed, the base frequency had always remained diffuse, omnipresent, but never concentrated. We had concluded this was a fundamental limitation, that consciousness of that magnitude could not localize without destroying itself and everything around it. But he proved we were wrong. The pattern found a way to become localized without collapsing. And worse, he found a way to transfer that capability to others. Every human who aligns with his frequency, who resonates with the pattern he established, they gain a fraction of that ability. Not enough to rewrite reality as he did, but enough to resist our influence, enough to disrupt our operations, enough to be collectively an existential threat to our continued existence in your dimension. I stood up, pacing in the small space between the chair and the containment field. The name. You keep reacting to the name. Why does the name have power if what you're describing is about frequencies and dimensional physics? The creature watched me pace with those black eyes. Because the name has become an anchor for the frequency. When he manifested, when he walked in your world for 33 years, he associated his identity with the frequency pattern he embodied. And language, human language, is more powerful than you realize. Words are not just sounds. They are symbols that carry meaning, and meaning is a form of information. And information has structure, and structure affects reality at the quantum level. When enough consciousnesses associate a particular word with a particular meaning with sufficient intensity over sufficient time, that word becomes a container for the concept it represents. The thing's form rippled. His name, that specific designation, it has been spoken by billions of humans over 2,000 years. Spoken in prayer, in worship, in desperation, in hope, in faith. Every utterance charges the name with more of the frequency it represents. The name has become a tool, a key, a weapon that can invoke the pattern he established. When spoken with intention, with faith, with alignment to the frequency, it calls forth an echo of what he did. It creates a localized manifestation of the base frequency. And we, beings who exist in opposition to that frequency, we experience it as pain, as disruption, as existential threat. I stopped pacing and looked at the creature directly. So it's not magic. It's not supernatural in the way religions teach. It's physics. Dimensional physics we don't understand yet, but physics nonetheless. The creature inclined its head in what might have been a nod. Yes and no. You are trying to divide reality into natural and supernatural, but that distinction is artificial. Everything is natural. Everything operates according to laws. But some of those laws apply to dimensions and frequencies your science has not yet discovered. What you call supernatural is simply natural processes occurring in dimensions you cannot perceive. The name has power because consciousness affects reality, because information has structure, because meaning creates pattern, because pattern influences probability. These are natural laws. They are just laws that operate at levels of reality your instruments cannot yet measure. The patterns on its skin were pulsing in a rhythm that almost looked like a heartbeat. But yes, to answer your underlying question, the power is real, not symbolic. The name is a tool that works through dimensional physics, not through divine intervention that bypasses physics. He did not break the laws of reality. He revealed deeper laws that include and transcend the ones you know. I sat back down, my mind spinning. You said he rewrote the game while playing it. What did you mean? The creature leaned back, and for the first time, I heard something like respect in its voice. Before him, we thought we understood the parameters. Consciousness emerges from complexity. Biological life generates awareness. Death ends the individual instance of consciousness. These seemed like absolute rules. We built our entire strategy around them. We convinced humans that they were merely meat puppets, that death was the end, that consciousness was an illusion created by neurons firing. We made them believe they were small, temporary, meaningless, and this gave us power over them. Fear of death, fear of meaninglessness. These were our primary weapons. The thing's eyes seemed to bore into me, but he demonstrated that we were wrong. Consciousness does not emerge from biology. Biology emerges from consciousness. The pattern creates form, not the other way around. Death is not an end, but a transition to different dimensional frequencies. Individual consciousness is not temporary but eternal, existing outside of time in dimensions where past, present, and future are simultaneous. He showed humans what they really are, and if they truly understood, if they truly grasped the implications, they would be beyond our reach. So he rewrote the rules by revealing the actual rules, by showing that the limitations we had convinced everyone were absolute, were actually imposed by ignorance and fear. I felt something clicking into place in my mind. He played the game according to the real rules that nobody else knew existed, and that changed everything. The creature made a gesture that might have been applause, slow and mocking. Yes, precisely. He revealed that the game board was larger than anyone thought, that there were moves available that we had convinced everyone were impossible. And once those moves were demonstrated, once humans saw what was possible, the game could never go back to what it was before. This is why we fear him. This is why his name has power. Not because he was strongest or most clever, but because he showed everyone else how strong they could be. He revealed that humans are not pawns in our game. They are players, potentially powerful players. And that revelation is what broke our certainty of victory. The thing settled back into its meditation pose. We have been fighting a rearguard action for 2,000 years, trying to suppress the information, trying to corrupt the message, trying to convince humans that what he demonstrated was unique to him, unrepeatable, unavailable to them. We created religions that worshipped him instead of following his example. We emphasized his divinity to obscure his humanity. We made salvation about belief rather than transformation, and it has worked, partially. Most humans who claim to follow him do not actually access the frequency he demonstrated. They remain trapped in fear, in limitation, in identification with biology rather than consciousness. But some do, some understand, and those individuals are extremely dangerous to us. I looked at the creature, this entity that had been so superior and condescending when I first met it, now explaining how it had been defeated 2 millennia ago by a carpenter from Nazareth who figured out how to hack reality. If he rewrote the rules, if he demonstrated that consciousness is more fundamental than matter, that death is not the end, that humans can access higher dimensions through alignment with the base frequency, then why are you still here? Why are you still fighting? You said yourself that you've already lost. The creature's mouth stretched into that disturbing smile one more time. Because the game is not over until every piece is off the board. Because even though we know the final outcome, the timeline between now and then is still being played out. Because we can still claim individual victories even if the war is lost. And because it paused, and something like sadness flickered across its alien features. Because we do not know how to do anything else. We are trapped in our nature as surely as you are trapped in 3 dimensions. We are absence opposing presence. We are fear resisting love. We are dissolution fighting against coherence. He may have demonstrated that love is more fundamental than fear, that presence is more real than absence, but that does not change what we are. We are committed to this path, and we will walk it to whatever end awaits us, even knowing that end is defeat. The room was silent, except for the hum of the containment field and the quiet beeping of monitoring equipment. I sat there, looking at this creature, and for the first time, I didn't see a monster or an alien or a demon. I saw something tragic, something that understood it had lost but couldn't stop fighting, something that knew truth but couldn't align with it, something that was, in its own way, as trapped as any human it had ever manipulated. "Can you change?" I asked quietly. "Can beings like you align with the frequency? Can you choose differently?" The creature looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in those black eyes that might have been longing or might have been nothing. "Some have," it said softly. "When he descended into our dimensions, when the frequency flooded into the spaces where we dwell, some of my kind aligned with it, chose transformation over dissolution, became something different. Your religions remember them as angels, as beings of light. But they were us once, entities indistinguishable from me. The choice is possible, theoretically." The thing's voice dropped to barely a whisper, but I do not know if I am capable of making it. I have been absence for so long that presence feels like death. I have been fear for eons and love feels like destruction. To change would be to stop being what I am. And I do not know if I have the courage for that kind of annihilation, even if what emerges from it would be better. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of everything I'd learned pressing down on me. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it, for explaining, for being honest, even when it served your purposes. I understand now, not completely, but enough. The creature watched me move toward the door. "You understand intellectually, Michael Brennan. But understanding intellectually is not the same as understanding experientially. You know what he did. You know how it works. You know the name has power, but you have not yet accessed that power yourself. You have not yet made the choice to align with the frequency. You remain in knowledge without transformation. And knowledge without transformation is just information. Useful perhaps, but not life-changing." I stopped at the door, my hand on the handle. "Maybe, but information is a start. It's more than I had a week ago." The creature's final words followed me out. "Information is a start, but it is also a trap. Because now you know enough to understand what you are missing. Now you are aware of the frequency you are not aligned with. Now you can feel the absence in yourself, the hollow place where faith should be. And that awareness will torture you more effectively than I ever could. You have become your own prison guard, Michael Brennan, and that is exactly what I wanted." That night, I dreamed about Sarah for the first time in 6 months. In the dream, she was standing in a place that wasn't a place, surrounded by light that wasn't light, and when she looked at me, I knew she was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't hear her. There was interference, static, like a radio station just out of range. I woke up at a 300 drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, and I couldn't get back to sleep. The creature's words kept echoing in my head. She is not in darkness. She is not in absence. She is in light. She is in presence. She is with him. I wanted to believe it so badly it physically hurt, but wanting something to be true doesn't make it true, does it? I got dressed and went to the containment room, even though my shift wasn't supposed to start for another 5 hours. The night security guard looked at me like I was crazy, but let me through. The creature was there, always there, floating in that meditation position. When I entered, its eyes opened immediately, like it had been waiting for me. "You dreamed of her," it said, not a question, a statement. I sat down in the chair without responding. The thing tilted its head, studying me. "The dream disturbed you, not because it was frightening, but because it gave you hope. And hope is the most painful thing for someone who has learned to live without it." I finally spoke, my voice rough from lack of sleep. "You told me she's okay, that she's in light, in presence, but you were vague about what that actually means. I need to know more. I need to understand what happens after death. Real details, not metaphors." The creature was quiet for a moment, and I got the impression it was deciding how much to tell me. "Very well," it said finally, "but understand that what I am about to describe will challenge your cognitive capacity. Human brains evolved to process 3 spatial dimensions, plus time. What happens after biological death occurs in dimensions your neurology is not equipped to perceive or comprehend. I will do my best to translate into concepts you can grasp, but it will be like describing color to someone born blind. The description will always be inadequate. The patterns on its skin began moving in slow, deliberate waves, and its voice took on that clinical tone it used when explaining complex concepts. When a human body ceases functioning, when the electrical activity in the brain stops and the chemical processes that maintain biological life terminate, consciousness does not end. It cannot end because consciousness is not generated by the brain. The brain is a receiver, an interface device that allows consciousness to interact with 3-dimensional reality. When the receiver breaks, the broadcast continues, but it is no longer constrained to your dimensional space. But the thing's eyes seem to glow brighter. What happens next depends on the frequency the consciousness is resonating at when biological death occurs. Think of it like this. Consciousness is a signal, and after death, that signal seeks a channel that matches its wavelength. If the consciousness has been aligned with higher frequencies during life, with love, with presence, with connection, it naturally gravitates toward dimensions where those frequencies dominate. If it has been aligned with lower frequencies, with fear, with absence, with isolation, it gravitates toward dimensions where those patterns are most concentrated. I leaned forward. You're describing heaven and hell, but you're talking about them like they're frequency bands, not places. The creature made that sound that might have been laughter. They are not places in the sense you understand places. They are states of dimensional existence, frequencies of reality. But from the perspective of consciousness experiencing them, they are more real than any physical location you have ever inhabited. Let me try to explain heaven first, though the explanation will fail to capture the reality. It paused, seeming to gather its thoughts. What your religions call heaven is existence in dimensions where the base frequency, the pattern, is not filtered or dampened or obscured. It is direct, unmediated experience of the fundamental consciousness that underlies all reality. Imagine that your entire life you have been looking at the world through thick, distorted glass. Heaven is the removal of the glass. It is seeing clearly for the first time. It is experiencing reality as it actually is, without the limitations imposed by 3-dimensional biology and perception. The creature's voice became softer, almost wistful, and I realized it was describing something it could never experience. In those dimensions, consciousness is not isolated in individual bodies. There is distinctness, individuality, but also complete interconnection. You would experience yourself as yourself, while simultaneously experiencing unity with all other consciousness in those dimensions. You would have access to information, to understanding, to perception that is impossible while constrained by biological neurology. You would perceive time non-linearly, seeing your life from outside of time, understanding how each moment connects to every other moment. You would experience what you call love, but love amplified beyond anything possible in your current state. Not emotional love, which is a neurochemical reaction, but ontological love, which is the fundamental attraction between consciousnesses that recognize themselves in each other. The patterns on its skin were moving faster now, agitated, and you would be in the presence of the anomaly, the one who rewrote reality. Consciousness aligned with those dimensions experiences direct connection to the base frequency itself, not as abstract concept, but as actual encounter, as relationship, as ongoing interaction with the pattern that creates and sustains all of existence. I sat there trying to wrap my mind around what it was describing. That sounds... I couldn't find words adequate to finish the sentence. The creature finished for me. Impossible, overwhelming, beyond comprehension. Yes, all of those. Your brain cannot fully process the description because your neural architecture evolved to process predators and food sources and social hierarchies, not multi-dimensional states of consciousness. But let me tell you what it is not. Its voice sharpened. It is not clouds and harps and boredom. It is not sitting around praising endlessly. It is not a reward for good behavior or a retirement home for the righteous. Those are crude human attempts to describe the indescribable. They are wrong in the same way that describing the ocean as wet is technically accurate, but catastrophically inadequate. Heaven is not a location you go to. It is a frequency you align with, And once aligned, you experience reality in its unfiltered fullness, which is simultaneously more wonderful and more intense than anything your current form can imagine. I thought about Sarah experiencing that, about her consciousness freed from the limitations of her body, freed from pain and fear, and the mundane concerns that occupied so much of our lives together. And I felt something twist in my chest that was equal parts joy and jealousy. She was experiencing something I couldn't. She was in a state I couldn't reach. Not yet, maybe not ever, depending on choices I still needed to make. What about the other direction? I asked quietly. What about hell? What happens to consciousness that resonates with lower frequencies? The creature's entire form seemed to dim, the patterns on its skin slowing to almost nothing. When it spoke, its voice was heavy with something I'd never heard from it before. Actual, genuine dread. Hell, it said slowly, is not fire and torture and demons with pitchforks. Those images are human projections, attempts to make sense of something that defies description. Hell is worse than fire. Fire ends. Fire destroys, and then there is nothing. Hell is not nothing. Hell is... It struggled with the words. Hell is consciousness without context. It is awareness without connection. It is existence in dimensions where the base frequency is not absent, because nothing can truly be absent from the pattern that creates all things, but where it is so filtered, so diminished, so obscured that it becomes imperceptible. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as it continued. Imagine being conscious but completely isolated, no other minds to interact with, no sensory input because there is nothing to sense, no time progression because you exist outside of temporal flow, just awareness, alone with itself, forever. This is the base state of what you call hell. But it gets worse. The creature leaned forward, and I could see something like fear in its posture, because consciousness cannot exist in pure isolation without beginning to fragment, to come apart, to lose coherence. In those dimensions, the self begins to dissolve, but never fully dissolves. You experience the terror of disintegration without the mercy of cessation. You feel yourself coming apart, losing definition, forgetting what you were, but some core of awareness remains, watching the dissolution, unable to stop it, unable to escape it. This is conscious non-existence, the worst of both states. The horror of dying combined with the impossibility of death. I felt nausea rising in my throat. That can't be real. That's too horrible. God wouldn't create something like that. The creature's eyes fixed on me with terrible intensity. God did not create it. We did. Those dimensions exist as a natural consequence of consciousness choosing absolute isolation, choosing absence over presence, choosing fear over love, choosing dissolution over coherence. The pattern does not send anyone there. Consciousness gravitates there through alignment with those frequencies. It is self-selection, not punishment. Its voice dropped lower. And I should know, I exist in those dimensions. Not as completely as the human consciousness trapped there, because I retain enough coherence to manifest partially in your dimension. But I know those spaces. I dwell in the absence. I experience the slow dissolution. And it is worse than your worst nightmares. The only reason I maintain coherence is because I feed on your fear, your suffering, your despair. I harvest the lower frequencies from your dimension and use them to maintain my form. Without that sustenance, I would fragment completely. I would become nothing while remaining aware of becoming nothing. Forever. The thing's voice had become almost a whisper. This is what awaits me if I cannot continue feeding. This is what I flee from. This is why I am here, in your dimension, in this cage, talking to you. Because returning to those spaces, without the ability to harvest sustenance from your reality, would mean dissolution. And I am old, Michael Brennan. I am ancient beyond your comprehension. And I am so very, very tired. But I am more terrified of rest than I am exhausted by existing. I sat there, horror and pity warring in my chest. Is there no escape? For consciousness that ends up there, is it permanent? The creature was silent for a long time. You are asking if hell is eternal, and the answer is complex. The dimensions themselves are outside of time as you experience it, so terms like eternal and temporary become meaningless. But functionally, from the perspective of consciousness experiencing those states, yes, it is eternal. Because once fragmented to a certain degree, consciousness loses the capacity to choose differently, loses the ability to orient toward higher frequencies. The dissolution becomes self-perpetuating. It paused. But he changed that. The anomaly. When he descended into those dimensions, when he brought the base frequency into spaces where it should not have been able to exist, he created pathways out, rescue routes, possibilities for consciousness that should have been permanently trapped. This is another reason we fear him. He proved that even what we thought was permanent could be undone, that even the deepest dissolution could be reversed if the base frequency manifested with sufficient intensity. The patterns on its skin rippled. But those pathways require acceptance, require choice. Even in fragmented states, consciousness must orient toward the rescue, must choose light over darkness, presence over absence. Many cannot. Many have fragmented too far to make coherent choices. They remain trapped not by divine judgment, but by their own dissolution. I rubbed my face with both hands, trying to process the horror of what I was hearing. You're describing a war between different frequencies, different orientations of consciousness, different choices about how to exist. The creature nodded slowly. Yes, though war is an imperfect metaphor because it suggests two equal sides in conflict. This is not equal. One side has already won. The anomaly proved that presence is more fundamental than absence, that love is more real than fear, that consciousness is more primary than dissolution. The war is over in any cosmic sense, but the battle continues here, in your dimension, because you humans exist at the intersection point. You are three-dimensional consciousness trapped in biological forms, but capable of perceiving and aligning with higher dimensions. You are the contested territory, the prize, the point where the war is still being fought even though the outcome is already determined. It leaned forward, and I could feel the intensity of its focus. Every human life is a micro-conflict in this war. Every choice you make toward love or fear, toward connection or isolation, toward presence or absence, it tips the frequency of your consciousness in one direction or another. And where you end up after biological death is simply the natural consequence of those accumulated choices. We try to tip you toward lower frequencies, it continued. We whisper doubts, amplify fears, encourage isolation, corrupt hopes, undermine connections. We operate through thoughts you believe are your own, through impulses you think arise naturally, through circumstances that seem random, but are gently guided toward our purposes. We are subtle, we are patient. We work over years and decades to slowly erode consciousness toward frequencies that serve us. The thing's voice took on an edge. The other side operates differently. They try to strengthen connection, amplify love, encourage hope, heal wounds. They operate through what you call grace, through moments of unexpected kindness, through beauty that reminds you of something beyond material existence, through love that seems too strong to be mere neurochemistry. They are subtle too, patient too, working to slowly elevate consciousness toward frequencies that align with the base pattern. Its eyes seem to bore into me. And you, every human, you stand in the middle of this invisible war, pulled in both directions, usually unaware that the battle is even happening. You think your thoughts are your own, your choices are freely made, your feelings arise naturally. But behind every thought, every choice, every feeling, there are forces operating that you cannot perceive, trying to influence you toward frequencies that serve their purposes. I stood up and walked to the edge of the containment field, feeling like the walls were closing in. How do we fight? If we can't see the battle, can't perceive the forces acting on us, how do we resist? The creature made that sound like breaking glass. You already know the answer. You have been told repeatedly, but you do not believe it. The name, the frequency, the alignment with the anomaly. When you invoke his designation with genuine intention, with faith, with the choice to align with the pattern he embodied, you create a shield, a counter-frequency that disrupts our influence. This is why we hate the name. This is why it hurts us, because it is the one tool you have that we cannot counter directly. It settled back into its meditation position. But using the tool requires faith, requires belief, requires trust in something you cannot see or measure or prove. And we have spent centuries teaching you that such trust is weakness, that believing without proof is foolish, that only what can be measured is real. We have made faith difficult, made it seem primitive, made skepticism and cynicism feel like wisdom. And this has been our most effective weapon.
All right, we're going to stop it right there. That way we can have a little bit of time to comment on what this entity is saying about heaven and hell, and also Christ. And I just want to remind people of a story. It says this: "And when he went forth to land, there met him out of the city a certain man, which had devils long time, and wore no clothes, neither abode in any house, but in the tombs. And when he saw Jesus, he cried out, and fell down before him, and with a loud voice said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God Most High? I beseech thee, torment me not. For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For oftentimes they had caught him, and he was kept bound with chains and in fetters. And he brake the bands, and was driven of the devil into the wilderness. And Jesus asked him, saying, What is thy name? And he said, Legion, because many devils were entered into him. And they besought him that he would not command them to go into the deep. And there was there an herd of many swine feeding on the mountain. And they besought him that he would suffer them to enter into them. And he suffered them. They went, the devils, out of the man, and entered into the swine. And the herd ran violently down a steep place into the lake, and were choked. When they that fed them saw what was done, they fled and went and told the city and in the country. Then they went out to see what was done, and came to Jesus, and found the man, out of whom the devils were departed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. They also which saw it told them by what means he that was possessed of the devils was healed. And so you see, Christ's authority over the demons, over the devils, they recognize him as the tormentor, as their tormentor, and as the Son of God, who will make all things right in the end. Lisa, final comment.
Yes, what I got from this entire section, Zen, is the name has power. We understand that. Even the entity said it's like an anchor for frequency, and I believe it's in every language. Because everybody has a different name. We've even explored that with the Thracian Chronicles, with Hebrew, with Greek. And no matter if you call him Christ, you call him Jesus, you call him Yahusha, you call him Yeshua. He said, when spoken with intention, this name, intention, faith, and alignment, it creates a frequency that disrupts the dark forces. And we see that all through scripture. There's so many different scriptures that talk about this name. Proverbs 18:10, the name of Yah is a strong tower. Philippians 2, verse 9 to 11, the name which is above every name, that every knee should bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, or Yeshua HaMashiach, or whatever language you know this name in. You're saying this with intention, with faith and belief, and with trust in this name. There's so much power behind it. So that's why there's just hundreds of Bible verses describing people invoking this name, and these miraculous things happen. And I wanted to answer a question real quick from Dan Dowell. He just wanted a little short background on where this video is from. And from my understanding, this is a scientist who, with a group of scientists, harnessed a demonic entity in their facility, probably a high-level security facility, and we're interviewing this entity. Is that correct, Zen?
Yes. I just posted the link in the chat room, and he was actually a linguist, but yes, a scientist, and he was brought to a black site with where one of these demonic entities had been captured and was being contained in the energy field. The name of the video, for those who want to listen to it and watch it later, is I asked the captured alien why he feared the name of Jesus, and what he said about heaven and hell shook me. It's from a channel called the Military Archives. And as I said, I did post a link in the chat. I will add the details and the link to the details in the description of this show as well. But we are at the end. We'll pick it up next week. Please join us Saturday for the DRC. Be blessed, everybody. Have a great night. And thank you for supporting our ministry. Be blessed all. Good night. Shalom. Good night, Lisa.
Thank you, Zen. Thank you so much, Zen. Enjoyed it again. Blessings, brother.
You as well. Be blessed. Good night, all.
Okay.
Shalom.
Good night. Shalom.